Good morning, happy Halloween, and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for October 31st, 2019. Here are our top stories. Student loan debt continues to spiral and is not just impacting who you think. And help on the way, possible remedies for the student loan crisis. Student loan debt is nearing close to $1.5 trillion. And my next guest says it's not just impacting young Americans. Join me now, Betsy Mayat. She is the founder and president of the Institute for Student Loan Advisors. Well, Betsy, it's a pleasure to see you. Good morning and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Thanks for having me.
And unfortunately, this is a scary stat, and we're here to talk about student loans, but there's over almost $1.5 trillion in student loan debt out there. That just befuddles the mind.
It's a huge problem. And I think what people don't realize is what the picture of the borrower that's struggling really looks like. I think people still assume that student loan debt is a young person's issue.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is half of all student loan borrowers are over the age of 30, a quarter are over 45, and the fastest growing population is actually the over 65s.
Wow. I mean, that's just amazing. On the show, we cover a full range of issues. This is one that we cover. Debt, consumer debt's a big issue. And I was surprised that people who go to medical school run up close to $200,000 in student loan debt. Those are our future doctors. Then you've got people who go to grad school run up student loan debt. But even the average person going to school now is running up student loan debt. And I know we're going to talk in the second segment about how to get out of that and dig yourself out. I'm using the digging motion. But it just, how do people get into that situation?
So I always tell people that student loans are the symptom of the real problem, and the real problem is the cost of higher education. And families, there's a broad lack of financial literacy in the United States. I just read a study that shows that 69% of parents would prefer to talk to their children about sex than they would to talk to them about money.
And that's just a damning, lack of a better term, statistic, because I know most parents don't want to talk about sex, but it's funny when you mention financial literacy. It's true. When you go to a party, no one wants to talk about, you're supposed to stay away from politics, sex, and money. But if you talk to people and you have a heart to heart, a lot of people are in the same situations and have dealt with similar issues, didn't have money, were broke, lost their job. I mean, these are typical things that happen to all of us during our lives.
Absolutely. If I'm out in a social situation and someone asks what I do for work and I tell them, it's sort of like being a doctor or a lawyer. Everybody has a student loan story. Yeah. And it might not be their own student loan story. It might be their child or their spouse or their parent that has had every single person knows somebody or has experienced student debt struggle.
What I'm really surprised is when you said that it's not just an issue. Everyone thinks of it as a millennial issue, so younger people's issue. But when you said more mature people actually are facing this issue as well, that I guess it doesn't surprise me, but it surprises me.
For sure. I mean, I could tell you I'm working with an 88-year-old woman right now who's having her Social Security garnished for a parent loan that she took out decades ago for a child that she's estranged from. The way this woman communicates with me is through handwritten letters that she brings to Staples and someone scans in and emails them to me.
Wow.
And she's been dealing with this loan for decades.
So these are parents, and the parents, maybe they went to school but didn't have student loan debt, but the parents have children or grandchildren in some cases and underwrote a portion of that student loan.
That's some of it, but I'm seeing more and more older borrowers with their own debt. And a lot of that is related to the recession from 2008. A lot of people who became unemployed or underemployed during that recession went back to school in their 40s or 50s.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. And, coming out of school with $60,000 in student loan debt is very different if you're 21 versus if you're 51, because you don't have the length of time to pay it off, and you need to be focusing those extra dollars on retirement at that point.
Yeah, you're speaking the gospel according to us here at the network. And I'm surprised, you mentioned this poor 80-year-old woman that's a client of yours who's having her wages garnished. And I'm not sure the audience really understands that concept. Could you just enlighten us a little bit? I mean, someone's taking Social Security in which they have been paying into Social Security, and they're getting money out and like they're supposed to. And now, because so-and-so has a loan, they're taking it.
Yeah, if you have a federal student loan and you default on it and don't make arrangements to rectify that situation, the federal government can garnish your wages and most federal payments, and they can do that without suing you. So they'll take your tax refund, they will garnish your Social Security and other federal payments. So for this particular woman, she's 88. So we're working with her to get her loans discharged under total and permanent disability discharge. But for other people, that might not be a solution for them. There are other solutions if you're in default on getting out of default. We can talk about those later in the segment if you'd like.
Yeah, I want to just set up the issue. I think that many people certainly know about it, but the fact that people can cheat and take money, it seems like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand does. So if you deprive somebody money that they could use for saving, it's not like these people are living high and glamorous lives. She's 88 years old. She's just living out her life, I'm assuming, day to day. So she needs that money to cover her expenses. What is she supposed to do? You're going to force her, in her case, to go on welfare or a public assistance program? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And it seems like the left hand and the right hand, I did that right, aren't really working together in terms of the government.
It's a complicated issue. These loans are looked at as debts that are owed the U.S. taxpayer. So there are a lot of people where Social Security is their only income, and it's like the woman that I'm working with. And from a moral perspective, that's certainly a questionable tactic. There are, however, other people that have other income and other revenue at that stage, in which case you have to protect the federal fiscal interest, in other words, the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah, and I don't discount that. I think that's important, but I certainly, in a case where someone doesn't have any other income, I don't see the logic in that, but I may be missing some details. Let me ask you about one of the things that often comes up is the interest loan rate, the rate of interest charged for these student loans. And we've had the Federal Reserve adjust their interest rate and, for Fed's borrowing rate. What can you say about the interest rates on some of these loans? And do they adjust over time like you would with the Fed adjusting its rates?
So I've been in this industry since the earth cooled. And federal student loan interest rates are set by Congress, but they're not set every year. And I've seen Congress try to fix the student loan interest rate issue a couple different ways. Back in the day, before I believe 2006, student loan interest rates were variable, and they were based on most of them were based on the 91-day Treasury bill, and then they added a small margin to it. And they could go up to 8.25. Well, people were really happy with their student loan interest rates when rates were low. I saw them go down to the 2s at one point. Yeah. But then when they went up to the 8s, obviously people weren't as happy with it. So around 2006, Congress changed the law on how the interest rates were calculated, and they became fixed rates. And the rates they fixed them at in 2006 made sense based on the market in 2006. But then the market changed, so those rates looked high. Today, the way the law is written, they look every year when you take out a new loan, they look at the market, and the rate is based on that market, but then it's fixed at that point. So right. If Congress was rewriting the law every year, we might have student loan interest rates that made sense on a year-to-year basis. But they don't. They haven't touched that since 2008.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. now, especially around retirement, forgetting other domestic issues. But any sense that, this is a huge issue, and I know that Congress has heard testimony. It's not like this is a new issue. Is there any sense from your contacts on the Hill that any legislation could move with respect to student loans?
Well, on October 15th, the House Democrats dropped their latest version of a reauthorization bill called the College Affordability Act. It's 1,200 pages if you're looking for something to do next weekend. I've read it. It does address the interest rate issue, but I will tell you, in my opinion, these proposals won't pass. One of the things it does is it allows all borrowers to refinance their loans at whatever the rates are today. Not meaning if today is 2025, meaning today, 2019. It also allows private loan borrowers to refinance into the federal program under the rate for 2019. That's a huge cost to the budget, which is why I don't think it'll pass. But it's a talking point. It starts a conversation. So what that says to me is that Congress is aware, at least the members of the education committees are aware that the interest rates are an issue and they need to be discussed.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I got to assume that members talk to each other, but we have in the retirement side, as you know, the Secure Act. We've been waiting for that. That thing passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives, I think in May. Okay, comprehensive changes that would allow coverage for many Americans in this country who do not have access to a plan. Great thing. But now we've got something like student loan, which is arguably probably one, if not the highest consumer debt that's out there, commercial debt that's out there, that is it's like swimming upstream. It's going to impugn your ability to save if you're a millennial, if you're someone of my age, and Gen Xer, or even a mature adult in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s years old. I mean, you would think that they would try to address this, even though there is some level of cost or a lot of level of cost to the budget. But, that's how we got here, right?
Right. Again, it's a complicated issue. People forget that the money that's, and it's questionable whether there's a profit on student loans or not. It depends which analysis you look at it. And I've seen Congress look at it with the different methods of accounting. And depending on which method of accounting you use, depends on whether student loans are profitable to the government or not.
Right.
But people forget that those profits don't go into somebody's pocket. They go to things like Pell Grants and some of the subsidies to help lower income people. So again, it's a complicated issue. I don't know if you remember that movie Dave, where he sat everybody around the table to try to find money in the budget. Yeah, it's complicated.
Great movie. Kevin Kline, Sigourney Weaver, a few others that I can't remember, but great movie. Hey, Betsy, I want to take a break. You've done a great job setting up the issue. When we come back, we're going to talk to Betsy about how to solve the issue. So you stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back, and we're talking student loan debt today. Boy, that number is really spiraling. And Betsy Mayotte from the Institute for Student Loan Advisors is still with us. Betsy, thanks for sticking around. Again, it's Halloween. I'm scared now. You did a great job of setting up the student loan issue, but we've got to find some solutions. So tell us about your organization first, what you all do, and then let's start laying out some solutions for the American people.
Okay. So I'm the president of a nonprofit called the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Our mission, the whole reason I started this organization is because I recognized that borrowers needed a place where they could go to get expert and unbiased and, most important, free student loan advice. So that's our core mission. Anybody can reach out to us via email. There's no registration requirements. There's no referrals or anything. And ask their student loan questions, or if they have a dispute, we'll also help them manage that dispute. And that's really what a lot of borrowers need, is someone to help them wade through the different options that are there, and help them find the first step to finding the best strategy to manage their debt.
Yeah, it's almost like you're the student loan doctor, because when you have a tick on your throat or you have a cough and a cold, you go to the doctor kind of helps you manage the strategy and says you might want to try this, and they're bound by a Hippocratic oath, right, that they have to do right by you and do what's in your best interest. And love the fact that, like our organization, we're unbiased and we're just providing information, and you actually take on the initiative of advocating for people to get them in the right direction.
Right, exactly.
So a lot of it is, so what you're describing is advocacy. So you kind of know if there are multiple loan programs, you kind of know I don't want to say tricks, because although it is Halloween, you know how to navigate and who to contact in order to mitigate some of these loans or defer or re-amortize or whatever has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially, listen, the key to solving the student debt crisis is making sure that borrowers have access to the right information at the right time. And that's what we're here to do. We essentially have two types of borrowers. We have the borrower who they've done all their research, they've read all the things, they talked to their loan servicer, who really should be the first call. But the programs are so confusing, and it's such a financial impact on their lives. They want someone that they trust to just tell them that the strategy they've come up with is the right one and make sure they haven't missed anything. And then I have my other borrower who's just completely overwhelmed. They're either overwhelmed by the size of their debt, they're overwhelmed because of the situation that they're in, or they're overwhelmed by the number of options that there are, and they just want us to tell them what to do. And then I also have those, and we counsel them, like I said, via email. We give them the different options. We ask the questions. And then we have people that have the disputes. For example, we get a lot of questions about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. People that maybe they were denied and they didn't think they should have been. And we'll help them work through that, figure out if they were denied correctly. If they weren't denied correctly, we'll help them self-advocate, or in particularly complicated cases, we'll get their permission to call on their behalf.
What about preventing this? College isn't for everyone, and certainly going to a expensive college, even though all colleges are going up, a lot of people buy on brand, they buy on the alumni network, which are arguably important. Some of those things are important. Having a good education is important. But are there preventative steps that a family or a young person can take to avoid these issues? Are people counseling preventatively, to prevent this from growing from 1.5 trillion to 3 trillion? We don't want it to grow. We want it to
for sure.
slow.
I go back to what I said earlier about financial literacy. Here's the thing. Families need to look at the return on investment of college. And it sort of pains me to say that education for education's sake is no longer a luxury that we have in the United States. So, and families, college can be such an emotional decision, and people don't want to say no, but you got to ask why this college? 70% of students change their major before they're done, which is why they end up going for 5 years instead of 4. So keeping that in mind, if your child has their heart set on an unaffordable school, have them go to a cheaper school for the first 2 years. Number one, you'll save on the debt. Number two, if they're like 70% of their peers and they're going to change their major, they might decide not to go to that more expensive school in the end anyway. You can go part-time. It might take a little longer to get your degree, but it can save you on the debt level that you have. I see families that, if their child came to them and said, I want a brand new BMW, they'd laugh at them. But if the child said, I want to go to wicked expensive college number 5, they wouldn't even ask any questions. They would take on as much debt as it took to send them to wicked expensive college number 5 without figuring if that's the best fit for the child.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. I read all the time in news periodicals and journals about college endowments. And we actually have done stories on this show where there are some college, we talked earlier in the beginning of segment 1 about medical school debt being close to $200,000. And some medical schools are using part of their endowment or donated money to offset or absorb all these medical expenses to alleviate the shortage. We have a shortage, we have a shortage of doctors, of general practitioners. Any sense, obviously the endowment's important for, not all schools have huge endowments, but endowment's important for building buildings, supporting the sports team, boosters, all those kind of things. Any sense for whether or not that could be a source that would help remedy at least a portion, small amount?
I have heard proposals to, for example, start taxing these endowments and using the money to ameliorate the debt issue. But I think I would take it up a level from even the endowments. There's been a lot of chatter on the Hill and other places that colleges need to have some responsibility towards the debt level of their students. And I think that time is coming. That College Affordability Act that dropped a couple weeks ago has some proposals that sort of tiptoe around that particular subject. But I've seen some proposals, nothing that's made it so far as legislation. But again, I think it's coming where colleges are held responsible, repayable by their students. And I do think that is coming. And it's something that colleges should be aware of when they're making their tuition decisions.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same